What's up? What's up? What's up, Vanguard community? How's it going, everyone? Thanks for tuning into today's live stream. If you're new to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button and make sure to hit that like button if you're new or if you're not new. It really helps us beat the algorithm. But with all that said, how you doing, Zach? What's up, man?
Hey, dude, doing pretty well. Cards on the table. We had a little bit of a different stream plan for today, but we're coming at you guys anyway. Some unexpected twists and turns and circumstances have brought about a little bit of a different piece of content for today. But that being said, super excited to kind of break down all of the newest developments, the topics du jour, if you will. I can immediately not fuck up my very easy French on our podcast next time. But anyway, super excited to dive into everything today. Quickly, we're going to shout out our patrons, the people who make our rockin' world go round here at the Vanguard. Keep us coming at you guys daily like this. Coming out a little bit later in the afternoon, evening, depending on where you are in the States today. But yeah, looking forward to talking about all the clusterfucks on Twitter today.
Yeah, a lot of stuff going on Twitter. I forgot to put it in the headline, but yeah, there's also a pretty crazy Hassan clip that I want to react to. I don't know if you saw that one, Zach, but lots of takes in all directions on this whole trucker convoy protest situation that I'm excited to dig into. But that's right. Before we get started, we do like to shout out our patrons at the beginning and end of all of our live streams. We do a big shout out to our patron community. You guys do keep the show together. You guys make what we do possible. You're the fuel in our gas tank and all that. But yeah, just a huge sincere thank you to everyone supporting the show on Patreon. It really does mean a lot to us, and it keeps the show going, like I said. And if you want to join, then hit the link in the description, patreon.com/the Vanguard channel. And you're right, Zach, we did have a pretty exciting interview that we were all ready for today. Unfortunately, that did have to get rescheduled. So hopefully we'll be bringing you that in the coming days or weeks. But for now, luckily, the left doing the left thing, creating drama for us to talk about. So we got plenty of that and more for you for today's live stream. We probably at least have an hour's worth of content, so make sure to stay around for the entirety of it. Again, today is mostly going to be focused on this trucker convoy and all of the implications and differing opinions surrounding it. It's definitely an interesting subject matter, to say the least, for a variety of different reasons and angles. To start things off, let's just take a look here. This is a piece I pulled up from, I believe, Reuters. Canada's Trudeau invokes emergency powers in bid to end protest. Canada Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on Monday activated rarely used emergency powers in an effort to end protests that have shut some of U.S. border crossings and paralyzed parts of the capital. And I'll remind everyone that hasn't been following this closely that this comes after Trudeau has been on the phone with none other than Mr. Joe Biden, because this is now starting to affect not only Canada's, capital and the flow of trade, but also America's now. So now Biden and American interests are involved as well, and have been pressuring Trudeau to really take a bold stance on this issue. And this appears to be the culmination of that. So it says, under the Emergencies Act, the government introduced measures intended to cut off protesters' funding and took steps to reinforce provincial and local law enforcement with federal police. The blockades are harming our economy and endangering public safety, Trudeau told a news conference. And it's no doubt that it's harming the economy. I think that's fair to say. I don't think there's as much evidence that it's endangering any public safety. From what I've observed, there hasn't really been any violence at this protest, this convoy, whatever you want to call it. It certainly might be a bit annoying, a bit frustrating for the folks that are living in that area, what with the honking horns and all the mayhem. But from what I've seen, it has yet to devolve into a violent situation. So I'll just put that out there. Trudeau told a news conference, "We can and will not allow illegal and dangerous activities to continue." But the Canadian Civil Liberties Association said the government has not met the standard for invoking the Emergencies Act, which is intended to deal with threats to sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity. The group said the Freedom Convoy protest, started by Canadian truckers opposing a COVID-19 vaccinate or quarantine mandate for cross-border drivers, has drawn people opposed to Trudeau's policies on everything from pandemic restrictions to a carbon tax. Copycat trucker protests have also sprung up in Israel, France, Australia, and New Zealand. I know there's also some in Brazil. Protesters blockaded the Ambassador Bridge, a vital trade route between Windsor, Ontario, and Detroit, for 6 days before police declared the protests on Sunday, while others have shut down smaller border crossings in Alberta, Manitoba, etc. The protests have entered a third week. They camped out in front of the Canadian Parliament. The latest steps were said to be excessive, etc., etc. Cutting off funds. The financial measures bring crowdfunding platforms under terror finance oversight, authorize Canadian banks to freeze accounts suspected of funding the blockades, and suspend insurance on vehicles in the protest, finance minister said. So, this is a little bit buried down in this article, but I think this is where it really is important and starts to get kind of insane. Again, this is not the headline necessarily, but this is really crazy stuff. These measures, these emergency powers and their invocation has basically made it so that Canadian banks are freezing the accounts suspected of funding this protest and suspending insurance on the vehicles in the protest. Now, that is a step that I didn't even think we would see happen. We first had the GoFundMe basically refused to give the money that had been raised to these protesters. But this is a whole nother step. And I think a lot of people are rightly calling it authoritarian. What's your take on all this, Zach, before we get into some of the other different commentators' opinions on this, including Max Blumenthal, Kyle Kulinski, Hassan, and others?
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot to unpack here, right? And I think who is it that keeps tweeting about this? I think it's our friend of the show, Ron Placone, that always tweets about how nuance is a word that should be shot in the head because it's meaningless now. And for a lot of time, I would agree with that, but I'm going to go ahead and use it here anyway. I feel like this is a discussion that needs a lot of nuance. It needs a lot of picking through, even though it also does involve some hard lines in the sand for me. So, one of the things that we're all learning about Canada, because for the most part, if you're an American, you only really know much about American politics. And, I know criminally little about Canadian politics. If you were to put a gun to my head, I barely know how their parliamentary system works. But what they do have, and at least I know now, is that they kind of have an Emergency Powers Act that's very similar to the United States, right? And I don't know if you remember, I'm sure you do, Gavin, and the people listening, a few years back, we were all talking about how crazy and extensive the emergency powers granted to Donald Trump would be if he ever declared a national state of emergency. He could, shut down airports. He could seize funds. He could, unilaterally change, basically impose martial law. All of these kinds of things are just given with very unspecific qualifiers, with very unspecific requirements, right? It's very much up to the discretion of whoever's in power. This seems to be very much the case also in Canada. So Trudeau, after he gets off the phone with Joe Biden, and for anybody who doesn't know, really for the most part, Canada's foreign policy and domestic policy, when we decide to intervene, I mean, they're just kind of like a little bitch to the United States. They're like England or any other state that doesn't want to go to war with the United States and calls themselves an ally. They just kind of do whatever we tell them because we're the bully on the block, and that's how we roll. I imagine after that conversation with Joe Biden put the pressure on him, said, "Hey, man, you figure this out or we figure this out, okay? Do something about this right fucking now, or I'm going to start making you look bad. I'm going to start doing shit that will piss you off. I will hurt the Canadian people." I don't know what the fuck he says to him on the phone call. We're never going to know the full transcript. Obviously, it's a dialogue between two, leaders. But essentially, I imagine that's, because he's fucking with U.S. capitalism now on top of Canadian capitalism, that's when it becomes a real problem. And that's when they're like, all right, we're going to do everything. We're going to rely on every antiquated, barbaric law that we have in this book that's super draconian. And we're going to just use it to shut this all down. And if you have a working brain and you're a leftist that's been involved in protests, you're going to understand that they will then use this as justification. They will wield this and say, well, it's not just left-wing protests that we use this extreme barbarism and draconian response to. It's going to be, we just did it to this right-wing protest as well. So I think it comes down to the fact that while I don't necessarily view this as a working class movement, I think if you look at the demands of the truckers, they're decidedly lacking things that would actually make life meaningfully better for a lot of the truckers. They're not talking about, the lack of overtime pay, the criminally low wages, the lack of, good benefits, paid time off, things like that. And there's also not much diversity. It's often been said by a lot of people, but there's a very diverse community of individuals in the trucking industry in Canada. Particularly, you see a lot of Asian folks from South and East Asia, not very well represented at these striking things. So I have criticisms of this. Of course, I don't think it's some like working class uprising, but I'm smart enough to know that if I abandon this principle of people have the right to protest, people have the right to congregate, people have the right to raise hell, and I say, oh yeah, let's just send the fucking pigs in on them, and then the pigs are going to be sent in on us, and they'll have a fucking great excuse. A lot of people are like, oh, well, the pigs will be sent on us anyway. Yeah. And then they'll be able to say, remember when you just begged for it the last time when you didn't agree with these people, and everybody that disagrees with you will wield that as an argument to say, oh, you're full of shit. You don't have any principles. This is why it's important to stand up for free speech, freedom of assembly, regardless of the fact that I don't agree with what they're protesting for. And this seems to be a really missing jump. You never see consistency from people, it seems, in mainstream media, right? Like either the Republicans are cheerleading this on now, but it was fascism and terrorism whenever it was something that they disagreed with, inverse with the liberal left-wing commentary. And it's like, no, I have the ability to parse through the ethics of the cause in each situation and decide for myself. But I also understand that if I remove the rights from one of these individuals, I'm going to be removing the rights for everybody. That seems pretty clear in American history, and other histories I feel like would bear that out rather clearly.
Right. And for me, and I think a lot of other people on the left, it's more of just about a principled defense of people's right to protest. And I'm in favor of protests getting a little bit intense, a little bit aggressive, maybe when when it calls for it. And I think that I defended the Black Lives Matter protests, a lot of what went on last summer, or was it the summer beforehand? Time is just blending together, but 2020, yeah. I defended a lot of the actions taken there, so I think it would be a little bit hypocritical for me to all of a sudden castigate these people for protesting in a way that, sure, maybe inconveniencing some people's lives and definitely the economy. But again, it's their right to protest for this. If this is something they feel that they need to protest, then they have every right to do so. And I think that we should be taking some lessons from this too, as the American left, as far as really, making a show, really starting a movement on the ground and demanding our demands. I think it's that simple. Let's take a look here, because you were talking about some of the hypocrisy. Let's listen to Hassan, his take on this, and let's see if what he has to say makes much sense.
That's so annoying. They just like blow their horns the entire day. They should literally make that illegal and also throw people in jail straight up. It's the most annoying way to protest. I think you should absolutely get thrown in jail, and maybe even like you should be police brutalized a little bit, like a baby bit. Okay, that just for being so annoying. I mean, straight up, just like a little bit. Like not like police brutalizing, like how do I describe it? Like you're a skateboarder in America and a cop catches you doing skateboarding where you're not supposed to. I'm not saying like police brutalize in the sense that like you're like a black teenager. I mean, like police brutalize in like a regular police altercation where there is like a little bit of escalation, just like a baby bit,
For what? Hey, what are you doing? Hey, hey! Yeah, he failed to ID.
Well, that's so annoying. I'm already done. Like if they were just like partying and they're like, yeah, take your masks off, don't you know? That's fine. Who cares, right? But the honking of the horns, that's really fucked up. It's so annoying because it's such an annoying thing, such a nuisance. Just crack just literally just baton them a little bit. Impound some vehicles, baton them a little bit. They'll stand down. They're all pussies.
Yeah. So obviously some of that's in jest. Clearly he's just trying to trigger Jackson Hinkle and all these people, and mission successful. But still, I think if the shoe was on the other foot and some right winger was talking this way about protesters that were protesting the police state in a left wing way, I don't think he would necessarily give them that same benefit of the doubt. I don't think a lot of people on the left would, and most people would probably agree that that's pretty disgusting rhetoric when talking about the police state in relationship to a protest movement. But what did you think, Zach?
Yeah, obviously with you, I'm not like a prude, right? I'm not getting my fucking panties in a wad about this. Obviously he was fucking trying to trigger people, right? He was trying to get people worked up. That seems to be his new gag recently, right? It's like, yeah, I'm rich as fuck and I'm a socialist. Let me trigger everybody that's mad about the fact that I'm rich as hell and I somehow have this massive audience that, like, you know, sometimes I'm really like scratching my head about why they stay with you. But anyway, but that being said, it just immediately makes me take you less seriously all over the place, because that clip is going to be played like a motherfucker. Hassan's big, guys. People, I mean, our show is so small. Like, he's probably like 200, 1,000 times bigger than our show, something like redonkulous like that. That's going to get played over and over and over again the next time he's trying to rally the troops for a protest, that for a good cause. That's something that he's behind. Maybe it's something that the Vanguard's also behind. You know, and I do not like the comparison between George Floyd and the truckers 100%, but it obviously is natural in some capacity because it's a wide protest movement. I think the substances of those issues are very, very different, and I would feel very different about them in an argument. But that being said, the next time that there is something like that where we do have to go out and demand justice, or, you know, demand police reform, because clearly we haven't gotten it and all this kind of stuff, you know, they're going to play clips like that and be like, yeah, man, like, just beat them up a little bit. These are just fucking looters and rioters and all kinds of shit. And it's only going to take a couple of right wingers to come up pretending that they're like, oh, we're the Boogaloo boys that actually aren't white supremacists that are here. And then, you know, they show up and they're dressed in camo and they set some shit on fire. And then we get to watch a video all night about how we're all just like fucking looters and fucking rioters and all kinds of shit. And then they'll be like, just beat him up, right? Just like a little bit. Even Hassan Piker, avowed communist on the internet, leftist Hassan Piker, thinks that it's okay to beat up people a little bit, you know, just a little bit, right? So obviously it's not a great look. Obviously it makes you not be taken super seriously, but it just looks like he's going for like cringe gags at this point with his audience, who he's like trained to feel a very certain way about other people on the internet who are really serious about this issue. You know what I mean, Gavin?
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, it's just annoying. I think the hypocrisies when it comes to this issue are so fucking frustrating on both sides. And we saw this not just with the trucker convoy, but also when it came to January 6th. How many fucking people on the right wing pointed their finger at all the Black Lives Matter protesters and called them terrorists and called them all of these words and you know, discussed it in such grave matters. And then as soon as it was the right doing some crazy shit, oh, they were trying to save democracy. This wasn't terrorism. They were trying to save democracy, et cetera, et cetera. And the same thing goes on the other side too. You know, when now here we're seeing this protest in Canada, and a lot of people that defended what went on during the George Floyd protests, including myself, I was one of those people. But a lot of people are now acting like this is terrorism and this is insanity and this should be cracked down and this does warrant a police state. And I simply disagree. I am in favor of, you know, citizens' right to protest. And sorry to break it to you, but a lot of the working class, a lot of like the, you know, union trucker types around the world, not just in America, not just in Canada, but in places like France and all across the world. Yeah, a lot of them are kind of right wing. That's what we have to deal with. Those people have every right to protest too. That you might not like it. You might not like their cause. I don't necessarily like their cause. I'm pro-vaccine. I, you know, don't think this is the number one issue in the world that's worth protesting over. That being said, that's how they feel. It's their right to protest. Even if it is just a minority of truckers, they still have the right to protest, at least in my opinion. They also have the right to raise money via GoFundMe, whatever else. I just hate the fucking hypocrisy when it comes to this stuff. When people, you know, want to look at one protest on one side and say, oh, this is terrorism, and then the other side, oh, this is perfectly justified. No, it's all justified. For the most part, all protests are justified, and that includes getting a little bit aggressive. That includes making your demands heard in a real way. I stand by that right as someone that has participated in protests, that has participated in, you know, Black Lives Matter rallies that have definitely gotten kind of crazy. Yeah, like that shit happens. Unfortunately, that shit happens, and we can't set a precedent, a brutal authoritarian precedent, because the protests are on the right. I'm sorry, I just don't believe in that. That being said, we're going to get to some more interesting angles of this as well. Before we do so, I did want to shout out a couple super chats. Thank you, NO, for the $4.99. Any thoughts on the extradition of the former Honduran president to the United States? I was unaware of this, I'm embarrassed to say. Just did a tad bit of research. Let me pull this up before we get to the Max Blumenthal, Kyle Kulinski beef. Quickly wanted to address this because it is interesting. Like I said, I just looked it up, so I don't have a ton of information at my hands, but the U.S. asked Honduras to extradite former President Juan Orlando Hernandez. The U.S. has formally requested the extradition of the former president the former Honduran president on drug trafficking charges, according to senior Honduran officials. The decision could potentially launch one of the highest profile criminal cases against a former head of state in years. Hernandez was once considered a U.S. ally and was president of the Central American country from 2014 until 2022. So yeah, I don't really have enough details about this or knowledge about it to have a firm opinion, but do you have anything to say on that, Zach?
I mean, everything that I gleaned from that article you just read tells me most of what I need to know. This guy used to be useful to the United States. He stopped doing what the fuck they wanted. They said former ally of the United States, and now he's getting his fucking comeuppance, right? Do what the fuck we want, and we will let you be as cruel as you want to your people. Or I'm not saying this guy was. I'm just telling you this is the American philosophy. Whoever's in charge of Central American country, South American country, any kind of Latin American country that's in our hemisphere, right? We kind of have the same philosophy, which is like, yeah, if you will let us do whatever we want and you will let us pillage your country for resources, we'll make sure you live a real happy life. As soon as you stop giving us exactly what we want, maybe you start working with another country that we don't get along with, then we'll call you a drug trafficker and, we'll try and get you extradited to the United States so that we can fucking hang you or throw you in a box forever. That sounds like what we would do. And again, it's just like people will constantly fault. They'll be like, he was a terrible person. And it's like, one, I don't know if that's true. Two, I don't really care if that's true because we are allied with some of the most heinous jackal fucks on earth. Okay. I mean, we all lived through WikiLeaks. We know who our allies in Afghanistan were, like warlords in Afghanistan that would like have child sex slaves, like all the while we were over there telling people we're just there for the young girls so they can get an education. Like, all right, America doesn't have any standards like that. So I would imagine that what happened to this guy is he just got on our shit list for no longer being useful to us.
Yeah, that sounds about exactly correct. But thank you, Inno, for the $4.99. Really appreciate that. Thanks for bringing it to my attention. We might report more on the subject in the future. Also, thank you, In Tompkin, for the $10. My friend lives in a neighborhood not really near the Capitol, and truckers are blocking families from leaving their homes. Protesting is great, but this borders on dictionary definition of terrorism. Whew. Okay, well, that's fair. I sympathize with those people. I sympathize with the people that are being inconvenienced by this for sure. That being said, we can't sit here and deny and act like that there weren't things that went on under the George Floyd protest movement that also bordered on the dictionary definition of terrorism. I mean, there literally were buildings being burnt down and stuff like that. I don't think that gave Donald Trump the right to invoke emergency powers and put the military on the street to squash the protest either. So yes, I sympathize with the people that this is inconveniencing. Again, I would probably be pissed off if I was one of those people. All I'm saying is that I think this latest move from Trudeau and seemingly from the U.S. government prodding him to do this is just a step too far. Not that there should be no measures to, prevent, if there is a genuine threat to people's safety or whatever, then yeah, maybe there should be something done to help those people. But I do think this latest move has just gone too far, and that's all there is to say. But, thanks for the perspective. Did you have something to add to that? I think we have another chat that's basically saying the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you look up the definition of terrorism, right, just because I want to have it at our availability, just because you brought it up, and unlawful use of violence and intimidation, especially against civilians in the pursuit of political aims. So just trying to be like, intellectually honest here, right? Gavin and I may or may not have been involved in some protests in Kansas City that led to the destruction of property, for example, right? Now, if I live near that destruction of property and I would argue that it was, a symbol of the capitalist state and of, white supremacy and, of the, an embodiment of why our nation celebrates and continues the persecution and subjugation of black people. But a right-wing person would argue that we were destroying historic monuments or destroying public landmarks. That was a tool of intimidation to bring about our political agenda, right? We had Margaret Kimberly from the Black Agenda Report on shortly after George Floyd, and she said something that stuck with me, which was like God bless the person that set the Minneapolis Police Department building on fire. Because that motherfucker knew what the fuck needed to go down. This dude was not letting anybody change their message. He was like, get rid of these fucking police. And they set the fucking place on fire, and it really reinvigorated the movement. I mean, people were like, fuck yes. Like, I wasn't in Minneapolis, but my sister was at the time, and I got a lot of first-person accounts on what was going on. Like, people were pissed off, in my view, correctly, and they were letting everybody know about it. All right, and I was here, and I was like, yeah, this is America. Let people know you're pissed off. Fuck capitalism. I don't care about private property. That was what I was saying on shows like this one or in blog posts at the time, right? Well, if you're a right winger, you could just flip the script and play all that audio back to me, and I look like a goddamn hypocrite if I don't say, well, you know what? Even though I massively disagree with these people, and gosh, there's that guy. He used to be Brother Q on Twitter. I think he's changed his name to Anthony on Twitter. I'm not sure. I don't know the guy about him, but we follow him, and he was making the point. He was like, I am massively opposed to the agenda of these truckers, but I'll go out there and fight these fuckers if there are fascists myself before I send the goddamn police to do it, right? Because who the fuck says we need to abolish the police, but then also please hold my hand and clean up these people I don't like? No. Like, if it's important to you, if you think you need to counter protest, show the fuck up and stand, in opposition to this. I don't know.
Yeah, I totally agree. And thank you so much for the super chat. Really do appreciate that, M. Tompkin. I appreciate the perspective you're offering to the show, of course. We did get a couple more. Hold tight, guys. We're about to get into the Kyle versus Max drama. I know you all are waiting with bated breath, but let me get through a few more of these real quick. Thank you, Taylor Fowler, for the $4.99. Awesome dog. That's a big chungus right there. Been sub for 6 months and a patron for 3. Well, thank you so much for the support, Taylor. That's fucking awesome. Thank you so much. Finally caught my first live show. Well, congratulations. Later start is great. Plans to continue, or is this a one-off? That just kind of depends on our day-to-day vibes, bro. You know, we just kind of wake up and we're like, maybe I woke up a little bit late this morning, so we're going to go live later in the day, or, depending on what's happening in the day. A lot of times we do kind of like to knock it out early because we get our coffee in us and we're feeling, all jittery. We're ready to talk shit about politics and get our opinions out there. And then as the coffee wears out throughout the day, we get a little bit more lethargic. The cannabis kicks in, if you know what I'm saying. But in the event that, I wake up a little bit later and drink my coffee around like 3 p.m. instead of like noon, then yeah, you might get a stream a little bit later in the day. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and if it works out that, more of our audience is available later on, we could definitely try and commit to like 1 or 2 weekly late night streams. The other hard part is like, juggling schedules. Gavin and I know we're both usually available at like 1 o'clock-ish on the day-to-day because we don't like to schedule shit for ourselves at that part of the day because it's like lunchtime or whatever. You can just bang it out when you've like, you still got the sun, in the sky. But I also do kind of like these laid-back nighttime streams a little bit. We sometimes go a little longer. Sometimes we'll do like a second stream in the day because we'll get like a 5 o'clock coffee and or like an espresso or something. And you're like, you know what, man, I have some more shit to say. Yeah, dude, let's go back on the stream. So, we never really can tell, but that's why there's no like Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 6 p.m. Vanguard. Because we're like, what if we don't have anything to talk about at 6 p.m. on Friday? Then our show just sucks. Cool thing about YouTube is you can just upload whenever. There are no fucking scheduling that you have to do. But we really appreciate getting a rounded out live audience, and we love chatting with you guys. So we'll be sure to throw in some more late night streams just for you, Taylor.
Yeah, thanks again, Taylor, for the support and the comment. Really appreciate the super chat and the support on Patreon. You're a real G. And yeah, we'll try to do more later live streams. I know a lot of people echo your feelings on that one, so thank you for the comment. Also, thank you, Will, for the $10. Protesting alone does nothing. Change will only come from riots, road closures, strikes, hard boycotts. And I think you're 100% correct, Will. I actually think that's very, very well articulated. As much as I respect a lot of the more low-key protests, it is true that a lot of them just go completely unnoticed. Like how often do people just like march down the streets and, nothing. It's like, I'm glad you're doing that. It's a good thing to be participating in protesting and, expressing your values in a democratic society. There's definitely nothing wrong with it, but it is, a little bit ineffective. What really makes change usually is the boycotts, the road closures, the strikes. and the riots. And I'm not advocating for violence. I don't think any of those necessarily have to be violent. But it's true that they definitely make more of an impression, a lot more of an impression. And they actually oftentimes affect the bottom line of certain companies or capital. And that's really when you get people's attention. It's one of the big reasons why we advocate for a general strike in order to really, really, truly get things done. And it's another reason why I think that, we can't just write off this trucker convoy as, a bunch of fascists or whatever. It's like, no, these are a lot of, there is a lot of working class support for this issue, even if it's not the majority of truckers. There is a lot of, genuine support behind this issue. And even though it's not my issue, my hill to die on, I think a lot of the tactics they've pioneered could prove to be quite useful in other contexts. So again, I don't want to come down too hard, even though I'm not necessarily on the same page when it comes to mandates and vaccines and all that stuff. But what's your take on that, Zach?
Yeah, well, I think this is where we get into some more of the good meat and potatoes of this conversation that we're going to have. And obviously that'll, develop over the course of the next hour or so. But, really what it is you have to ask yourself, and I think our chat will respond. Chat, I'm curious what you guys think. I think I know. And Gavin, I'm excited to know what you think as well, because we've talked about this as well. I don't know if it was on the call-in or YouTube or both, but if you were to take this exact example, right, of truckers shutting down everything. Remember when we were talking about how based it was like fucking 6 weeks ago when we were like, truckers aren't entering Colorado from I-70. Look at the show of force. Like, this 23-year-old guy's getting fucked. They're trying to dangle a 100-year jail sentence over him. They gave him that 100-year jail sentence. And then the governor, he didn't even bring it down he brought it down to 10 years. Guy should have walked. It should have handed a fat, I don't know the fucking nomenclature I'm looking for. He should have sent a fat fine to the trucking company, paid out the families that, were injured. It should have come from the top down, not just, scapegoating this working class 23-year-old truck driver who was given a horrendous no-win choice and survived the situation. And that's why they were trying to punish him. Anyway, we were all like, fuck yeah, truckers finally doing shit. Solidarity. This is amazing. And I was reading a bunch of articles about how shitty the trucking industry is and how there's so much burnout and how they get people wrapped up in all kinds of fucked up schemes, and you can actually lose money and you don't get paid overtime, and you don't get paid for like X, Y, and Z when you're actually still working, and they can like fuck you and not like I just figured you would like get paid to sleep in the hotel when you're like truck driving, but that should actually never fucking happens, it seems like, from what I was reading. So we were all like, yeah, truckers show of force. Now let's start clamoring for some working class causes. If those motherfuckers had said, we're shutting down food transport until they cancel rent, do you know what kind of a wet dream I would be having every night? Like, I would be like, fuck, truckers are my hero. I don't care about anything. And do you also know what kind of horrible fucking smears would be coming out about these truckers? They're all pedophiles. They're all fucking like, anti-Semite, whatever. The media would smear them, right? I'm not saying that that's 100% what's happening with the truckers in Canada, but I can say for sure that's what would happen to truckers in the United States, even if they were fighting for something that I did agree with, like rent cancellation, like Medicare for all, like ending student debt, like a jobs guarantee, whatever the fuck policy that I actually support, legalizing marijuana and expunging the fucking whatever those truckers got behind, that was a policy that I supported. I know for a fact I would be cheerleading them on. I'd be like, you got to put the pressure on, baby, if you want to get results. I'd be like, let's talk about the Montgomery bus boycotts and all of the men and women who walked to their working class jobs instead of sitting in the back of a bus. They said, fuck you, Montgomery buses. We will walk our ass to work. We will walk our ass home, and we will do it together with solidarity, because we would rather walk tired and hungry than sit on your bullshit buses. That's amazing, right? And that's one of the things that we can look back on history and be like, wow, that was amazing. But they tarred and feathered those people too. Again, I don't want to valorize the effort, because again, I'm a pretty pro-vaccine guy. I think if you look at the polling amongst union truckers in Canada, even like 80 to 90% of truckers are vaccinated / support getting the vaccine. But that being said, it's not my place to decide what people get to protest for, is all I'm saying. As soon as you try and dictate what's a lawful protest and you start, bringing in what's allowed, that's going to be really hurtful to the left, because we're going to have no way to apply our own pressure without just being labeled terrorists and all thrown in solitary confinement.
100%. And if you remember what was going down in India not too long ago with their own kind of trucker protest, there was a lot of accusations thrown their way as well. A lot of people trying to say those truckers were far right elements and that they'd have been infiltrated by Nazis and all this ridiculous shit. So yes, this tactic is going to be used pretty much anytime there is a protest, regardless of what the actual message is behind it. At least that's what I've observed. So again, not that the truckers in this situation are the same, but I'm just saying there are other examples of that happening. But let's take a look here at a recent tweet from Max Blumenthal addressing Kyle Kulinski, who has, I think, been pretty damn correct on this whole issue. And we'll play some of Kyle's recent video on the trucker convoy in a second for some more context. But here is Kyle. He says, Canada trying to freeze the bank accounts of trucker protests with zero due process and oversight, calling them terrorists, is a precedent that will be used against any and all protests. You have to oppose it regardless of what you think of the substance of the protest. So this is a damn fine take, in my opinion. This is very accurate. It's very principled from Kyle. It's very accurate on the substance of the matters. And I think he's 100% correct that you can't just willy-nilly throw around the word terrorist when you're describing protesters, especially largely peaceful protesters. And that, really what matters is the principle of defending the right to protest, regardless of what you think of the substance of the protest, which of course seems like such a common sense goddamn issue to most of us. If there was any number of protests happening on the U.S. streets, whether it was whether it was against abortion, for example, I'm very pro-choice. But if there was a protest that was pro-life, as they call it, I wouldn't advocate for their funds to be frozen. I wouldn't advocate for the government to crack down militarily or with the police on those protesters. They have the right to express themselves, even though I think what they're protesting for is pretty fucking vile, to be honest. Pretty fucking vile. Like I said, I'm very, very passionately pro-choice. They still have the right to protest if that's how they feel. I'm sorry. A lot of people apparently don't understand that. Anyway, Max Blumenthal weighs in. Let's see Max Blumenthal's take. I thought this was a little bit uncalled for. Let's just say that. He says, these takes remind me of the left Syria regime changers who spent day and night smearing opponents of the CIA dirty war, but claimed to oppose direct U.S. military intervention as soon as the bombs started to fall on Damascus. Vaccine mandates are the basis of the biosecurity regime. Woo! All right. So this is, like I said, a little bit unexpected, given that Kyle, I don't think it's fair to compare Kyle Kulinski in this matter, given his takes on mandates, to the people who spent day and night smearing opponents of the CIA dirty war in Syria. Again, Kyle has actually been pretty honest and open about how he's anti-mandate. He's said that many times. He says, I think a hard mandate is authoritarian. I don't think it balances the health of the public with our right to have freedom. And that's why he's very, he's repeated over and over again on his show that he is anti-hard mandate. He says he's more in favor of a vaccine or test policy, which is essentially you can either get vaccinated or like test on a weekly basis to ensure that you're not coming to work infected with an incredibly infectious disease like COVID. I think that's fair. And I think so does Kyle. But to say that he's like this like unhinged pro-mandate person, I think is just a fundamental misunderstanding to be charitable, or mischaracterization to be less charitable of the situation and of Kyle, who's really, in my opinion, not your opponent here, Max. Like, I just feel like there's other people you could be going after if this is how you feel. And I'm not trying to just simp for Kyle, but I don't really think that he's the right person to be going after like this. To me, this feels a little bit uncalled for.
Well, yeah, he's just an easy punching bag that it's really easy to get a specific audience on Twitter, YouTube, wherever. People hate Kyle because of, he cucked to Bernie Sanders and, he didn't stand up vigorously enough for Jimmy Dore and whatever. So you have all of, and admittedly, a lot of those people, rabid consumers of the gray zone. So it's kind of like a two birds, one stone thing. You come out here, dogpile Kyle. All of those people who are like, yeah, Kyle's such a cuck, Kyle Kulinski. And then it's like, well, actually, it was a pretty decent take from Kyle. And actually, he's been pretty solid on his takes about Syria as well. I don't think he's ever once called for a vaccine mandate either. I don't know. Again, I don't know the specifics about the Canadian vaccine mandates. But I don't, as far as I know, nobody was showing up on your doorstep and injecting you in the arm with the fucking inoculation of the COVID vaccine. And I also understand that we have a super chat in here that Gavin and I haven't clicked on yet that says, if you are against vaccine mandates, it doesn't mean that you are anti-vax or right-wing. Understand the issue is government mandates, not vaccines. I would say it's probably a mixed bag. A lot of people are opposed to the vaccine that are in these protests, but I get that a lot of other people are just principally opposed to the idea of the government telling you what you can do with your body. I would argue that the government tracks us in a myriad of other ways. Why the COVID vaccine would be the one way that they're deciding to do it when they already have all of our fingerprints and our cars and license plate numbers and driver's license numbers and social security numbers and a myriad of other ways to track us and all that kind of stuff, and control our bodies. But yeah, I'm not trying to misportray every single person out there as defenders of one cause. But to say that there aren't that it's not an anti-vax movement, I think it's in some part very much an anti-vax movement, just as much as it is in some part, as you're saying, an issue against government mandates. So that would be my response to that. But yeah, thank you for the super chat, Chuck.
Yeah, thanks for the super chat, Chuck. And yeah, let's dig a little bit deeper into this because I feel like there might be some misinformation out there too, as far as what Kyle Kulinski actually said that would precipitate this sort of a response. You would think from Max's tweet here that Kyle's been out here smearing anti-mandate folks, which I don't think is accurate. And let's take a look at one of Kyle's more recent videos. I think he actually put this up yesterday. Kyle weighs in on Canadian trucker blockade. Let's just watch some of this and we can see what his stance is and whether or not Max Blumenthal's attack on him was warranted. Because again, I just don't quite think that, Max is directing his fury at the right target here. I don't really see Kyle as being what he's painting him as far as this rabid anti-mandate person smearing folks and smearing the truckers and stuff. He's really not doing that. And I think this video proves it. Let's take a look.
Having said that, what do I think of what their demand is? Listen, if 90% are already vaccinated, 90%, I don't know why they don't just say, you know what? It's no longer a hard vaccine mandate. We're going to institute a vaxxer test policy. That's it. So just say, all right, you don't want to get vaccinated. You don't have to get vaccinated, but you have to take a test. And a rapid test is super easy. It's super quick. Anybody who acts like that's some sort of, incredible crackdown on freedom and
So we'll watch the rest of this, but right off the bat, Kyle Kulinski is basically defending the premise of this entire rally. He's saying that, yeah, I think it's sensible to say that if 90% are vaccinated, then we can drop the hard mandate. Sure, you can still test on the weekly basis to make sure you're not coming to work infected, etc. But right off the bat, he's basically saying, yeah, I agree. This hard mandate is kind of ridiculous at this point. It seems to be effective in the sense that it got to 90% vaccination rate. But now that we're there, maybe we can dial it back a little bit. So right off the bat, it's not like he's coming out here and smearing the truckers. It's not like he's coming out here and even really shitting that hard on their premise for protesting in the first place. It seems like he's agreeing with it, which is why I found it a little bit odd that Max came at him like this. But let's take a listen to the rest of this, unless you had anything to add.
Liberty, I think you're being absurd. That's just a basic safety regulation in the middle of a deadly pandemic. But if 90% of the truckers are already vaccinated, and you guys know my stance on hard mandates in general, I don't support them. I think you have to balance both individual rights with the well-being and the health and safety of the collective and the community. You have to balance those things and if you're on the left, you're supposed to value both of those things tremendously. And thankfully, we have an answer. You don't do a hard mandate. You don't do wild, wild west, no rules at all. You do either get vaccinated. If you don't want to get vaccinated, fine. Here, take a rapid test and we'll see, if you have it. So I don't know why you wouldn't just do that. Instead, they're going in the other direction, and Trudeau just announced, invoking emergency powers that have never been invoked before, and they're cracking down in a police state sort of way. I don't agree with that. I think it goes way too far. 90% are already vaccinated. Just do a vaccinator test policy and call it a day. That's it. Just do a vaccinator test policy and call it a day. If you don't want the vaccine, you don't have to get the vaccine. Just take a quick test and you're fine. And understand, if this was the U.S., I'd be inclined to say, whatever, you don't have to do anything if 90% of them are already vaccinated. But since it's Canada, and in Canada, generally they're more pro COVID regulation than in the US, I think that this is the compromise that effectively would work and generally people would accept. Now, having said all that, what's the main thing I'm feeling in regard to the story? It's very simple. I'm jealous. I'm jealous because what's very clear, Edward Snowden tweeted about this the other day. I think he's 100% right, is now you have the ruling class and the elites are concerned that this sort of tactic, this sort of protest it really can work. And you know what? I think that's wonderful because now, workers do have power. And if like blockading a bridge in order to demand, certain things, if that ends up working and sends the message that you guys can do this in the future, I think that's wonderful. And the reason why I'm jealous is all they're asking for is like an end to the vaccine mandate. Whereas I look at it and I go, it's amazing the left hasn't gotten our shit together enough to do a similar kind of thing and demand in the US universal health care, right to a union, higher wages, paid vacation time. Now, granted, look, it's a Canadian thing, and so they already have universal health care, so they wouldn't protest for universal health care. But as somebody on the left, I'm just genuinely jealous that we didn't think of this tactic first, and we haven't employed this tactic because this tactic has a very high ceiling. You can just shut down trade between the two countries by blockading some bridges and making demands. Well, that's something I love to see. And I'd love to see U.S. truckers do it. And I'd love to see them do it for universal health care, right to a union, higher wages, paid vacation time. And you could just have a list of demands that all poll overwhelmingly popular that the working class is begging for. And then we do this tactic. And I think the fact of the matter is the reason why I think the right has gotten their shit.
Okay, so I swear to God, I had not seen this clip before you started playing it, Gavin, but he basically just made the exact argument that I was making. Like, he straight up just did. He was like, I want a list of demands from left-wingers from America, blah, 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 blah. Yes, that's so rational. That is the correct response. He's like, these people are Canadian. They're doing something that he came out and said he nominally agrees with, like, hey, don't force people to get these injections into their fucking bodies, right? Just let them get tested to go to work. I think that's pretty fair. I think that's pretty reasonable. If you're a person that's interested in compromise, you call yourself a fence sitter, that's a winner right there as far as the argument goes. And he makes no defense of the police state. In fact, he criticizes the police state. So I'm really struggling to see where Kyle is, the enemy of the truckers here, in any way, like, paved the way for this to happen. Like, I've seen a lot of people that were like, you could argue we're doing way more to pave the way to like get this. Like, when are we going to stop this? Like, Hassan Piker, for one, would be like a great example of somebody that you could tweet at to be like, you cheerleaded for this. Kyle, not so much, which is why I just think it's low-hanging fruit. He's like an easy guy to attack if you're attacking him from that perspective because of disagreements that he's had with that, left click of the internet. And so, yeah, that's why a cheap shot at Kyle for this when he actually had a really reasonable, fair, thoughtful take on the matter. So anyway, I thought that's it's bogus, but that's what's happening if anybody's like genuinely curious.
Yeah, no, it is bogus. And it's disappointing, too, because Max Blumenthal is someone that I have had a lot of respect for in the past. We've talked a lot about his reporting on Palestine and Israel and how amazing it was and how amazing it is. He's 100% right on that issue and a lot of others. We've had him on the Vanguard. We've talked to Max. He was really friendly. So, no shade. Like, I still respect the dude as a journalist, but takes like this just, it does chip away a little bit at my respect because, again, you're just mischaracterizing what Kyle Kulinski's opinion is. It's totally hyperbolic and unfair to compare him to an apologist for the CIA dirty war in Syria, when, by the way, he's been on your side of that issue too. He's been 100% on your side of the Syria issue too. So that's a little bit unfair. But also just to make him out as if he's out here smearing the truckers day and night, which you literally say, you remind me of people that were smearing Syria CIA dirty war day and night. So he has not been doing that. He simply has not been doing that. He literally said in that video, he basically agreed with the truckers' stance and that he thinks their tactics were excellent, so much so that he wishes here in the left we would employ those same tactics. I do not understand how this is in any way called for when, again, Kyle is more of your ally than your enemy on this issue. He offered a very nuanced take. I don't really see what the issue is here. And frankly, this is another instance coming from Blumenthal. He's also been out here referring to everyone that doesn't agree with him on COVID as the lockdown left, which I also think is very unfair and just reductive and unnecessary. So yeah, not a big fan of this recent commentary from Max. I'm sad to say, but I think that Kyle's very nuanced take was actually spot on. And again, I just don't understand how this was called for. again, not just to simp for Kyle Kulinski, but I think he was pretty dead on with his take. And I don't understand this this like lashing out. I think it's very uncalled for again. But it is what it is. I obviously he has every right to his opinion, and hopefully Kyle responds to this, and they can actually engage in some sort of a dialogue. Because obviously I'm always welcoming of debates and of discourse when it comes to this sort of stuff. I think it would be great if they could hash out whatever areas of disagreement they do have. But my point is just that I don't think they really do have as many areas of disagreement. That at least Max is making it out as if they do. Max is making it out as if Kyle's on the completely different page from him. And it actually seems like Kyle is basically backing up his stance in many ways. So again, it's just very, very weird. And there's much bigger and better targets to go after on this issue than Kulinski. So yeah, a bit of a head shaker for me.
Yeah,
definitely.
I mean, exactly. And it really just comes down to the fact that it's like, well, my audience doesn't like you very much, so let me go ahead and dunk on you really quickly so that I can make my point regardless of what your real position on this issue is, which is always like dumb and low-hanging fruit, right? Like, I don't think Vosh has very many good takes, but he had a great take on the truckers. It was very similar to the one that we just gave. So it would be weird for me to like just dunk on Vosh and be like, you fucking bonehead. Like, I can't believe you think the exact same thing as I do on this. Like, what the fuck's the matter with you? Or like, very similarly along the lines and completely misrepresent his argument. I did want to get to the super chat really quickly from Michael Williams. Michael Williams, thanks for tuning in. We always appreciate our older guys in the audience. And he says, as an older guy, it's really scary how young guys automatically bootlick the government on this vaccine thing. I took the vaccine, but I wasn't forced to do it, is the point. I wasn't forced to do it either. So I don't know if that's necessarily like bootlicking the government. Like, I got one kidney. When I go to the doctor and he tells me I need to do something so it doesn't get fucked up and I don't have to go on any kind of like fucked up dialysis or whatever when I'm older and that sort of thing. I just kind of like take his word for it and I put the pills in my body. I don't really consider that like bootlicking the government. I don't want to die from kidney failure and going on dialysis. You can ask friend of the show, JB Fonts, no fucking joke. You know what I mean? So I don't really consider taking the vaccine bootlicking the government. But if you're more meaning like the fact that people aren't questioning it or like, just willing to like kick it to the side, I guess I could see your point a little bit more. But Gavin, what do you think about that?
Well, I actually want to address another super chat first, just so it doesn't get lost, because we got one before that one. Thanks, Tanner, for the $4.99. Have you guys thought about making a trip or a few videos on rural Missouri? There's a lot going on here, and we cannot forget the rural working class. 100%, Tanner. We have thought about that, and we have a couple ideas for such a project. So, yeah, once it's like a little bit warmer out in the springtime, we will absolutely be taking a van journey out to rural Missouri. We have a couple ideas to make videos about like some of the communes that are out there, real life communism playing out, good stuff like that. But yeah, there's a lot of good ripe subject matter out there in rural Missouri for us to tackle and
get some real Ozark action.
Yeah, some real Ozark action. Exactly. Not filmed in fucking Georgia. But yeah, thanks for the super chat. 100% stay tuned for some more like documentary reporting content coming soon. We're really looking forward to getting out there. So thank you for the suggestion in the super chat. And you're 100% right. We cannot forget the rural working class. Thank you, Mike, for the $5. This is a blockade of an international border that affects thousands of lives. Protests are only protests if no harm comes to innocent people. I don't necessarily agree with that, because again, you could make the argument that harm came to innocent people during the George Floyd Black Lives Matter protests. I mean, same with Ferguson. It is true that certain like businesses were burnt down and places were robbed, and that definitely did affect the livelihood of certain shop owners and stuff like that. So what my only worry is that every time there's a protest that gets a little bit intense, they're gonna bring this up and be like, well, here's an example of it affecting people's lives, therefore it's not a legitimate protest. And unfortunately, they did that with Standing Rock. They do that with every protest that's effective. So again, not that the legitimacy of this protest is comparable to Standing Rock or Ferguson or Black Lives Matter, but I still think in principle we have to defend intense aggressive protests up to a certain point. Obviously, I'm not in favor of what happened on January 6th, for example, but I just think that's a borderline principled stance that I try to embrace, although I certainly understand this perspective as well.
Yeah, sorry guys, I didn't realize I jumped ahead on a bunch of super chats. These were not showing up for me. But anyway, I think that's kind of a problem, right? Because it's like, well, how do you disrupt the government enough to get what you want without impacting or affecting the lives of thousands of people? Like, what if we shut down the subway in New York City? That affects the lives of a fuck ton of people. They can't get to work now, but if it was in an effort to make the, a metro free in, X, Y, and Z place like New York City, or the CTA free in Chicago, right? Those would be things that I would be 100% down with, shutting down the fucking, subway transit system. So if while it might sound good, like, oh, it's only protests if they don't harm, doesn't come to innocent people. Well, you're going to see a lot of op-eds if you shut down the metro about like, oh, this poor immigrant has 16 jobs and 42 children, and he came to America working for a better life, and now he can't get to work because these crazy anarchists shut down the metro. Isn't this terrible and tragic? So, you know what I mean? That could be used to make a case of you're harming the lives of innocent people. So it's just one of those kind of chess games where you have to be like, I will not give up anything that I hope to utilize in the future as a leftist. And that's why I'm uncomfortable saying like, oh, this impacts regular people's lives. Like, yeah, if you want shit to happen, the government has to know you're impacting regular people's lives, because that's when you get the bulk of the people angry. And that's kind of how you get what you want. It's called applying pressure to the government, right? I get it. It's not ideal, but that's kind of a reality of wide-scale protests. Nobody said that would be easy or necessarily fun, but it's just a necessary byproduct, in my opinion.
Yeah, agreed. And a lot of protests just simply are inconvenient. Like when Black Lives Matter protesters shut down a freeway or a highway, and it's like it's preventing people from getting to work and shit. Like, yeah, that shit's fucking annoying. Like, I sympathize with the people that get stuck in those situations, and I'm sure it wouldn't be fun. It's definitely not convenient. I get it. But sometimes protests do have to really, get the attention of the media. And I don't think I just don't think it's deniable that the truckers in this instance have succeeded in doing that. Again, don't necessarily agree with their cause, but they still succeeded in getting the attention of the media and really creating a movement out of this. So, just to give credit where it's due. But time to get to this super chat, the one which you were already addressing a little bit, Zach. Michael Williams, thank you for the $10, Michael. As an old guy, it's really scary how you young guys automatically bootlick the government on this vax thing. I wasn't forced to do it. I mean, I share Zach's opinion. I also wasn't forced to do it. I'm not necessarily bootlicking the government. And also, this isn't exactly the first time the American government has like rolled out a vaccine. Like this happened in the 50s with the polio vaccine. This has happened like several times, probably potentially within your lifetime, Michael. So I would be interested to hear if your opinions on those other vaccines and those other vaccine rollouts, which did successfully end the various ailments which they were intended to. Would you categorize those in the same way as you do this one, or is this one somehow new and different? Like, this isn't the first vaccine.
Yeah, and I would also add that before I went to elementary school, and I went to the same one as Gavin, so I'm imagining his mom had to fill out the same one my mom did. Like I had to write that yes, I've had the measles vaccine, I've had the mumps vaccine, I've had the chickenpox vaccine, I've had the smallpox vaccine. Like that was a state required form, and I don't think everybody that goes to public school in America is bootlicking the government. So I don't necessarily agree with your framing, but I definitely understand the point you're trying to make, and appreciate the addition to the commentary.
Yeah, no, I definitely appreciate it as well, Michael. And I'm genuinely interested in your answer on my question. Like when the smallpox vaccine or the measles or the chickenpox, like, or whatever, when those vaccines were rolled out, did you feel the same way? Did you feel that everyone who wanted to take those vaccines in order to protect themselves from said virus or said ailment, did you think that those people were also bootlickers? Because for me, it had nothing to do with bootlicking. It had, it was a desperate urge to, not get coronavirus. I'm fucking terrified of getting COVID. I've, heard all these horror stories. I don't want to get COVID. I don't want to die from COVID. I don't want my family members to die from COVID. That's what prompted me to get the jab, not some fealty to the government. Fuck the government. I was interested in protecting myself and the people around me. And I think that probably most people that got the vaccine were similarly trying to protect themselves from what is undeniably a terrifying virus that we really don't even know the long-term effects of. I think that's more of the impetus for taking this vaccine, not like, oh, I love the government, I'm going to do whatever they tell me, I am just a bootlicking motherfucker. Like, I don't think that's really necessarily fair. I think that, to categorize people's opinions or responses to this in a more charitable light might do you some good, but I appreciate your contribution regardless. So thank you.
And I will add, Gavin, that if Michael was alive during the smallpox vaccine rollout, then we definitely need to get him on the podcast because that happened in 1796. But thank you. I was just making a joke.
I think there's been other like newer smallpox vaccines that were licensed, even in like 1981. I'm looking at a timeline of vaccine rollouts and a lot of. But yeah, the OG one for sure. Anyway, thank you, Michael.
I just remember because it happened shortly after the United States Revolution.
Gotcha. Anyway, thank you, Carolina boy, for the 4.99. Sick of these lefties like Max who go out of their way to attack the left because that's hot right now. I mean, I have no problem with inner left fighting. Obviously, we engage with it all the time. But this one just felt a little bit unnecessary. And like I said, it just felt like a mischaracterization of Kyle's actual opinion, which seems more in line with the truckers' protest than against it. So that's why I found it a little bit confounding. But I definitely agree with what you're saying overall, Carolina boy. So thank you for the 4.99.
Yeah, it would be kind of like if, we went out and we're like trying to roast Jackson Hinkle for something, right? And just because we disagree with him on a lot of shit, but then we ended up roasting him for something that we like actually do agree on, like force the vote or something. And it's like, wait, why are you doing that? I don't want to say that because they don't 100% agree. Like Max Blumenthal, I know, has been like cheerleading the fuck out of these like trucker protests and that kind of thing. And a lot of people have been more like, hey, like, I don't know about it as much as you, but he, really revving it up. And that's his right, obviously. And we support discourse. That's kind of like we were saying, like if Kyle can debate Vosh about what's going on in Ukraine, why can't he debate Max Blumenthal, somebody who's on a little bit of a different side of the left equation, about something like what's going on with Canada and truckers and that sort of thing? Would definitely be interested in hearing that. So yeah, I mean, we're the Vanguard. We can't bust anybody's balls for critiquing another leftist or whatever, but it just comes down to like, what is the substance of it, and are you just trying to look for some easy fucking clickable content, or is there something there, or is it a combination of both? And here at the Vanguard, we try and stick to at least a combination of both.
Yep. And thank you, Gabe, for the 4.99. It is truly a shame to see Blumenthal's fall from grace in the last year. Ben Norton leaving moderate rebels / the gray zone being emblematic of that. I mean, yeah, I can't really disagree with you, Gabe. I do find myself a little bit more on the team Ben Norton. But that being said, with all that said, I genuinely think that people like Max believe what they're saying. I don't think they're just trying to like grift the right wing necessarily. I don't think they're just trying to make money or get attention by having these opinions. Like, I really do think people like Jimmy Dore and Max Blumenthal believe this stuff. Jimmy in particular, given his experience with the vaccine, like I really do think they think they're uncovering something and they're really standing up to the establishment and to big pharma and all that stuff. Like, I think they're genuine in their resolve. But yeah, I do agree that it's a little bit cringy.
Yeah, it is what it is, right? I still think the guy does good at reporting on things like Palestine. And I still read a lot of his reporting and I make up my own mind on it. Sometimes I'm like, oh, that was not convincing. Max, try again. Sometimes I'm like, oh, damn, that was a good piece. So that's kind of how I view every single person in this entire media sphere, right? Like the Vanguard doesn't really have any friends left in this whole media space. It's just me and Gavin and, our few other homies and friends of the show, which is kind of liberating now because we just fucking, I'll give my honest analysis. I've thought Kyle has had terrible takes in the past. I was just busting his balls not that long ago for being too kind to Jordan Peterson, LOL. So it's not like I'm afraid to criticize anybody that I disagree with. And I think that that's good. So, if there's really good reporting from Max Blumenthal that Gavin and I see and we're like, oh, this was fucking base, like we'll still put it up here. And then people will be like, wow, you guys were such hypocrites. And it's like, no, I'm just looking at everybody's reporting on a case-by-case basis, or I'm just looking at everybody's commentary on a case-by-case basis. And that's why I can tell you when like I think that they're correct here and wrong here. You know what I mean? And I think that's a good virtue to have on like a media critique show like we do now on the Vanguard. But I don't know. I think so. I think that, yeah, you can be critical of Max, and I'm critical of Max as well. And some of his reporting that I disagree with or I think is more stodgy. And still think that, 100%, like he's kind of going where he thinks his reporting's taking him. And that's just in a different direction than where my politics are.
Yeah, for sure. And there's no doubt this whole vaccine COVID thing has been quite divisive in the left circles. A lot of debate as far as, what the correct position should be on. And I'm here for that. I think there's a, room for a healthy discourse. Nothing wrong with that. Again, I just felt that Max's attack on Kyle was a little bit like misplaced or misunderstanding in his actual perception of what Kyle thinks on this issue, which is why I thought it was weird. But yeah, I appreciate your super chat, Gabe. And thank you, Sean DeStefano, as well for the 4.99. Guys, what is the most progressive U.S. State? Most progressive. I mean, that's kind of tough.
Like that's like who's the tallest kid in kindergarten, right?
I would say probably like maybe Vermont. Vermont seems pretty fucking progressive. I think you can have assisted suicide in Vermont. Obviously, weed's legal in Vermont. Definitely some of that Canadian energy seeping downward. What do you say, though, Zach?
Well, it's tough, right? What are your leftist things that you're going to die on, right? Like, I mean, Alaska has a bunch of protected land. You get like basically a UBI check. Weed's legal. You can. I know for a while they had a law where you could just like literally build a small improvement on a piece of land and then inherit it, right? If you needed a place to live. But then they also had some bullshit laws too that were more indicative of like a more libertarian right-wing bend in the government. So I don't know. It's right. It's kind of like a catch-20. Like you're all fucked, right? I mean, like the tallest kid in kindergarten comment, but yeah, I would go with either Alaska or Vermont, depending on which kind of way you're, balancing it out. A lot of people would fall into the trap and say something like stupid, like California. California has a bunch of neoliberal, like fucking dog shit policies that dictate their state, a bunch of like needless oversight that's extremely like neoliberal, like and that gets a headline sometimes as being like, oh, fighting climate change, but really it's like, oh, you just can't have a gas lawnmower in this neighborhood in Beverly Hills now or something stupid like that. So but yeah, I would go with Vermont or Alaska also.
I don't know about Alaska. They're pretty far right from what I can tell. Sarah Palin was the governor there.
Well, yeah, but what policies from Alaska that we don't have in Kansas, or because like they do have a lot of left-wing policies was the point I was trying to make.
Fair. I just know that they export a lot of like right-wing lunatics into our political system. But
you could be a loony from Vermont too. You know what I mean?
True. Although for sure. I'm just saying their like entire government in Vermont isn't filled with like right-wing lunatics. But I know the governor of Vermont's like a right-wing lunatic right now. But it is what it is. I'm sure there's a lot of like super progressive folks that
there's not though. That was the point I was making. I was like, it just depends on like what are the policy. Like a UBI is kind of a like in the way that they do it in Alaska is kind of a progressive policy. Legalized weed is kind of a progressive policy. Like land reserves that they have in a way that they don't have in other state progressive policy kind of. So you know what I mean?
No, I know what you're saying. I was mostly just kidding, but thanks, Sean, for the super chat. And yeah, I don't really know if there's a good criteria to break it down. I mean, because yeah, you could say like, oh, Washington or Oregon, but then there's also a lot of like gentrification and neoliberal policies going on in Seattle or Portland and all that stuff. And I don't think that's necessarily progressive. So, sometimes the more stereotypical choices aren't actually super lefty. They just like to appear that way, but it is what it is. Anyway, interesting question to think about. Thanks for the super chat, Sean. And thank you, N. Tompkin, for pushing back once again. Thanks for the $5. Have to disagree. When your mom can't get a heart transplant because 10% of truckers don't like Trudeau and block the border, you'd have a different perspective. I mean, yeah, that's fair. Obviously, my heart goes out to your no pun intended, but my heart goes out to your mother if that's the case. That's really sad to hear, and I hope that she is able to get the attention she needs. And yeah, you're right. I mean, obviously, if I was in that situation, I might feel differently about that. I don't have that personal experience. Overall, what we're trying to do is defend the principle of protesting and blockading to make your point heard. I understand that in specific personal instances, it might be extremely inconvenient, extremely tough, and I understand that, and I sympathize with that completely. We're not Canadian. We're obviously not in that situation, so I respect your opinion as well, M. Tompkin.
Yeah, but I will push back just a little bit more because I think this is the kind of argument that we would be getting a ton of from the right if there was ever a massive protest from the left that utilized a lot of these things. And look, like I put my cards on the table earlier, right? Like if you look at my lifetime, right, odds are I will be on the fucking transplant list. I have one fucking kidney. I can show you guys the fucking star from when I was a kid, right? So like, I mean, cards on the table, right? I still don't think that, and again, if it was my mom, right, everybody's a sucker for their fucking mother. So I'm not saying that if I were in that position, I wouldn't be bitching up a storm, crying like mad, trying to figure out everything I could do to get my mom her heart transplant, etc. But I'm not coming at this from like, I have no idea what you're talking about, dude. Like, you know what I'm saying? And I still think that just because there's some like horrifying scenario where it's like, this can't get like, again, let's go back to the, even though these are not perfect examples and, I don't like it when people try and pretend that they are, George Floyd, right? They set the police department on fire. Now that fireman can't save this woman whose apartment building caught on fire and she has 6 kids in there. Now I bet you don't support, burning down the office of the fucking pigs. It's like, you know what I mean? That's a false dichotomy, right? Like that's like a, it's not exactly what people are talking. Well, my third response is, let's have more heart transplants available. Let's have better routes. Like, I don't know. Like, I just feel like you could kind of pick apart that argument and apply it to anything that you disagree with, like to come up with some horrifying, like impossible to say no scenario. And then be like, see, this is why we can't have protests like this. you shut down the highway in Minneapolis, and now the ambulance can't get from this place to this place. Isn't public demonstrations that shut down roadways terrorism? Like, I just think that that's what you're opening up the door for. So while I appreciate the difference of perspective and Tompkin, and I see where you're coming from, I still disagree. Even though obviously that would be a devastating, painful situation, and if that is the situation that you're in, I 100% see where you're coming from, because that would be devastating, and that would make me a mess too. But I just think since I'm able to look at this from like a perfectly like, oh, I'm in an ethics classroom and I have to argue one way or another. Like, I just think that this is the side that I come down on, and respect you if you come to a different conclusion.
Yeah, 100%. That was really well articulated, and thank you again for the contributions today, Ian Tompkin. I appreciate you sharing that side of the story as well, because obviously we don't want to be unnuanced in our coverage here. So I really appreciate that. And thank you, Sean, for the 199 most likely state to go universal healthcare. Well, Jesus Christ, that's a grim topic, because there are several states, California and Washington and New York, to be specific, that have done everything in their power to pass a single payer for the state borders. Obviously, whole Washington, we've reported on a lot and talked to those folks in Washington. They're trying to get single payer in the state of Washington. That is basically, the state has put up every single barrier in their way. The same thing has happened in New York with the New York Health Act. That got shot down. And the same thing literally just happened in California with CalCare, where the Democratic supermajority government basically destroyed the legislation to get universal health care in the state of California, impeding on that movement as well. And obviously Washington, New York, and California are considered some of the more leftist liberal states. So yeah, it's not a great outlook as far as that's concerned. I don't really know what state. Again, maybe Vermont. Vermont seems pretty based. They tried also.
Yeah, I was going to say, they technically signed it into law in Vermont. So most likely state to go universal health care, I think it's definitively Vermont, when their governor Shumlin, I think was his name. I looked it up one time before we interviewed whole Washington. He was the guy that was the governor before their current governor now, who's a Republican, we just mentioned. But he was not a Republican. He was a pretty Democrat, left-leaning guy. Obviously, he tried statewide single payer. But yeah, so I would go there. First state to do it successfully. I don't know. Fingers crossed. I got a lot of faith in the whole Washington people, so that's where I would put my money. Shout out to the Red Berets. Shout out to whole Washington. I think that the inside outside strategy of state by state and federal, if you talk to any of the Red Berets or the state by state people, they're like, well, if it went to a fucking vote federally, I would fucking collapse of happiness. So don't fucking act like I'm an enemy of that shit. You know what I mean? So I'll just go ahead and put my chips in with the folks at Red Beret. Shout out to all of them. Good friends of the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone check out the Red Berets and the whole Washington movement. If you're not aware of it already, we've had them on multiple times, but they're based as shit and definitely have the right approach. You good? Oh yeah, you're Red Beret. I was like, what the fuck is going on? Zach's jumping across the table at me. But yeah, thanks for the super chat, Sean. Really appreciate that. And whichever state does get universal healthcare, I am moving there day fucking one. Because I will say the only bad thing about the job that I have is that it does not give me healthcare. I love everything about this job except for the fact that I don't have fucking healthcare. Well, technically, I'm still in my parents because I'm not 26 yet. But as soon as that runs out, nope. I'm going to be fucked, and I'm not going to become a slave to the system in order to have healthcare, unfortunately. So
that's the one thing that's a bummer. I aged out on my dental insurance because my mom's dental shit only covered me until I was 22. Do you know how fucking expensive it is to go to the dentist when you don't have fucking insurance? I was like, Jesus Christ, I'm going to live with this cavity forever. I don't know.
Yeah, that's actually a good reminder for me to go to the dentist before mine does run out also, because yeah, I need to take advantage of that while I have it. But yeah, it's fucked that we even have to be having this conversation at all. It's so fucking crazy. But yeah, whichever state wants to have a huge boon in their economy as far as people moving there ASAP, yeah, enact universal healthcare. I will literally move there day one. As much as I love Kansas City and Missouri, I'd rather not die. But yeah, thank you for that. And thank you, Izzy.
What if it was like Arkansas, Gavin?
Oh, God. I would have no problem living in Arkansas. But damn, there are a lot
Bentonville.
of crazy peoples there. Especially, but I mean, we live in Missouri. Is it that much worse? I guess they are about to have Sarah Huckabee Sanders as their
and
governor.
Also, I just meant that's the town where Arkansas University is. So you'd have all the frat guys from Arkansas always living around town, always crowding every bar you ever want to go into.
Yeah, Arkansas does have some based landscape though. It is
The only open to the public diamond mine in America, as far as I know.
Hey, there you go. Shout out to Arkansas. I was just watching a great movie that was made in Arkansas. What the
Sling
Oh yeah,
Blade?
Shotgun Stories. The first film by Jeff Nichols, who made Mud and Take Shelter. He made a great indie movie called Shotgun Stories, which is set in Arkansas. Highly recommended. Good working class vibes. But thank you, Izzy Paints, for the $5. We live in a profit-based society, but we can't help but doubt the motives of a profit-based health industry. Maybe the two are incompatible. We live in a profit-based society, but we can't have it. Yeah, I mean,
No arguments from this peanut gallery, bro. We've said that like 10 million times on our show.
100%. And that's why I say that, even though I am personally pro-vax, I understand people's skepticism of anything big pharma. Obviously, big pharma has fucked over entire communities for the sake of profit. So, yeah, I
But
understand.
that doesn't mean insulin doesn't work if you're a diabetic.
Right, for sure. But I still understand the urge, to be super conspiratorial or whatever. Anyway, thank you, Gabe. Zach, what kind of immigrants do you know that have 42 kids? I don't know what that's in reference to.
No, he was. I don't think he got that I was making a joke. I was saying that, there would be they always go for the most devastating, sad story in the New York Times op-ed to try and discredit a movement, right? So it's like people were critical of AOC's dress at the Met Gala. So the first defense that comes up from like the New York Magazine, New Yorker crowd is, oh, well, don't you know that this was actually made by a Dominican immigrant who worked her way all the way up and then designed this dress or whatever. So I was making a joke about how, and not really a joke, but just a hyperbole about how you would find the New York Times writing an article about an immigrant working 16 jobs with 42 children to support who's now not able to get to work and feed them because the leftists shut down the metro in New York City as part of their demands to make it free. You would hear all about these stories of people who couldn't get to work because of the bad leftists that were shutting down the metro in protest or shutting down the highway in protest, right? To make it more sympathetic, even though it is a working class demand and not a ruling class demand. So that's all I was saying. That was the point that I was making. Not that I know any immigrants that have 42 kids or am commenting about that.
Fucking racist. I'm just kidding, bro. Thank you, Gabe, for the comment in the super chat. Thank you, Matt Ocelot God, for the $2. Rest in peace to Edgar Kahn, father of time banking. Rest in peace to Edgar Kahn. Can't say I'm super familiar with his work, but from what I'm aware of time banking, and from a brief Google search that I just did, seemed like a based comrade. So yeah, 100% rest in peace to Edgar Kahn, and everyone go look him up and do some research if, like me, you are an ignoramus.
Yeah, I have no idea who that is. Straight up, guys, I have no idea who that is. But if anybody, Matt Ocelot God, you want to tell me a little bit about him in the comment section, that would do me some good. Thank you very much for that $2 super chat, though.
It looks like there's a New York Times headline from when he died a couple weeks ago. He was a legal reformer in defense of the poor. He and his wife came up with the idea for federally funded legal services, and then went on to found the first public interest law school. So yeah, that's based as fuck. Rest in peace to Edgar Kahn. I probably should definitely do some more research and educate myself as to his good doings, because it seems like he definitely has a lot under his belt. But yeah, thanks for letting us know, Matt Ocelot. Really appreciate that. And yeah, thanks everyone for the super chats. Really appreciate the conversation. And yeah, I don't know. Do we have anything else to talk about, Zach?
I mean, we'll probably go. I mean, I'm down to go live again tomorrow, obviously, and talk some more shit, so we don't have to strenuate ourselves. I'm coming up with non-real words, so that does mean that it's usually time for us to get off the fucking live stream. But yeah, it does look like the one good thing that I'm noticing. This is tight. It does look like a lot of our regulars are able to make these streams. Looks like a lot of new people are able to make these streams. So fuck it. Why don't we try and do a couple more evening streams? I can make us some cocktails, Gavin. We'll sit up here, chill out. That could be fun, man. I would definitely be down for that shit. So yeah, 100% be down to do another one of these tomorrow. Unless anything gets in the way. We hate fucking announcing shit, because Gavin and I will wake up at like noon, and every day we're like, hey, you think you want to record today? Yeah, we got some shit to talk about. Yeah, sounds good. All right, let's get some coffee first, and then fucking do that in like an hour and a half. That's like how every day goes. But I think we'll have plenty of shit to talk about tomorrow. You know, so no, gotcha, guys. I just wanted to make sure that nobody thought I was like making a fucking racist comment about the birth rate of immigrants or something fucked up. I was like, Gabe, please don't. I would never do that. That was obviously not what I was saying. But anyway, thank you, Ronald Smith, for the super sticker. You kind of got like an Allen Ginsberg aesthetic going on right there, Ronald. Handsome guy. But anyway, good shit today, guys. Called it Zapped Zach and Gone Gavin. That's essentially all of our whole life. So catch us on the street to find us zapped and gone. But anyway, peace out, guys, and take it easy.
Yeah, thanks so much, Ronald, for the super sticker. Really appreciate the conversation from all of you comrades today in the chat. Love hearing out these perspectives. And honestly, I say this 100% unironically. A big part of the reason why I love having this job so much is because I can have conversations about these topics, not just with Zach, but with you guys in the chat as well. I love hearing these different perspectives that I haven't even thought of before, and actually being forced to engage with people that have different opinions and actually explain and defend my opinions. It's really useful to my own like intellectual I don't want to say intellectual development, but it definitely, issue by issue, it's really, really important to me in the way I process, these stories and really come to my own opinion. I love engaging with you guys. I love having these kind of conversations, and obviously, of course, with you too, Zach. But yeah, just such a great time. Thank you so much, everyone, for contributing to the chat today. It was awesome, and we're looking forward to bringing you guys more information on these specific issues and more. As Zach said, definitely down to do more nighttime streams. Or evening time. We say nighttime. It's like 6 p.m. where we are right now, but you know what I'm saying. More, later in the day streams. If people like that, then we're definitely down to keep it up. We'll try to do more of them. And as always, a huge shout out, a huge sincere shout out to the patron community. Thank you guys so much for keeping the show going. You guys can contribute by hitting that link in the description, patreon.com/the Vanguard channel. If you would like to help us as well and have the means, then please do so. It would be very, very much so appreciated. Even just a couple bucks a month goes a long way. Trust us. So thank you so much, guys. And obviously, if you don't have the ability to do that, no hard feelings whatsoever. Just please hit that like button, please hit that subscribe button. But yeah, huge shout out to the patrons. If you guys want a spot on the shout out screen yourself, hit up that link. It is one of the perks we offer, in addition to access to our Discord server, which I've been trying to be more active on. So if you want to engage with us on Discord as well, that's one way to do it. But yeah, thank you, Dan H, for the $2. Greetings from Toronto. Keep up the awesome work. Well, greetings from Missouri, Dan. That's awesome that you're listening from Canada. And thank you so much for the super chat and the kind words. Really glad that you're appreciating the work and the show.
Toronto, wow. No, I'm just kidding. No. Yeah, I've seen Toronto with my own two eyes, but never stepped fucking foot there. Only been to the what's that called right over there, the fountain, not the fountain, the Niagara Falls. Yeah, Niagara Falls. Am I a piece of shit because I thought that was so underwhelming when I was there? Maybe I was just like a fucking like high school kid. I was like 15. I was like, this is the dumbest shit. I want to eat some pizza and chicken wings. Fuck this. We're in Buffalo. I can't get any buffalo chicken wings. Anyway, have a good one, everybody, and stay warm in Toronto. Yeah, zooted Zach, exactly. So anyway, exactly. Perfect. That's gonna be my solo show when Gavin steals all the money and kicks me off of the Vanguard. Current affairs style. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, the Niagara Fountain. But no, yeah, I also, to be fair, when I went to Niagara Falls as like a young child, I also was pretty pissed off. And I was just like, but I have a feeling if I went back as an adult, I would probably find more of the awe and grandeur that people.
I don't know. I saw that scene in The Office where Pam and Jim get married, and I'm like, you guys could have gone to a beach somewhere. I don't fucking know.
Oh God. Anyway, thanks everyone for tuning in today. Great show. We'll see you probably tomorrow, if not later this week. But yeah, everyone have a great rest of your Tuesday. And if you're still watching right now and you didn't like click away like 10 minutes ago when we started wrapping up, then you're a real one. You're a real Vanguardian, sticking it through to the end. But yeah, peace out, everyone. We'll see you later.